Ferdinand Forbes Samson Bonham, well known as the master politician, and was an outstanding statesman too. He was a great leader and our hero, you understand. That's why we remember Edmund Forbes Bonham.
Yes, morning, viewers. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to this other program of the State of the Nation conducted by the Bonham Foundation. I want to say, just before I introduce my two guests on today's program, that I have the tapes for the program that we had on the 29th. That program showed on the 27th, the State of the Nation program on the 27th, where I had a speech by Forbes Bonham, which I will now arrange, because I had some difficulty, technical of course, to produce this tape for a number of our viewers who had asked to get copies of this tape. But I have now concluded arrangements with the studio here that I'll have it printed. And those of you who have contacted me to get copies of that program, which include a speech of Forbes Bonham, you can call Channel 9 to get copies of the tape. Of course, I will open the program at a later stage for those who would like to call in. But for today, we will be discussing with two executives of the Bonham Foundation, two young people, of course, who have been involved in the work of the foundation. And quite recently, we had our elections, and they both have been elected to very senior positions in the foundation. I want to introduce you to the two young ladies in the studio with me today. To my left and your right, I have Ms. Julianne Gall. Ms. Gall is the vice chairperson of the foundation. And to my right and your left, I have Ms. Akeisha Simpson. She has been elected at the last conference as the secretary of the foundation. Our focus on today's program will be twofold. First of all, we will look at this question of consensus. You know, that is a topic in the air. Since the 2011 election, there have been some difficulties in arriving at consensus on some very critical issues. And Forbes Bonham, as leader of this nation, was able to garner consensus on some very critical issues that needed to advance the interests of the people of this country. Ms. Gall has been doing some research on Forbes Bonham and this question of consensus. But you know, today we have difficulty in arriving at consensus with the anti-money laundering bill and the local government amendment bills that seem to be languishing somewhere and not being signed into law. But since it is the interest of Guyana and Guyanese for us to address this issue frontally, I want to turn to Ms. Gall and ask her whether in her research she was able to determine the level of what I describe as the level of leadership that has been exhibited by Forbes Bonham in garnering a consensus on critical issues for the advancement of the work of Guyana. Ms. Gall, Forbes, Bonham, and consensus.
Good morning, viewers. Thank you very much, Mr. Hines. First of all, on behalf of the Forbes Burnham Foundation, I would like to offer our condolence to the family, friends, relatives of the late Miss Debbie Backer. We share their grief, and we hope at this time of mourning that they would find solace and comfort in the work that she would have done in the party, outside of the party, and in Parliament. And as such, we offer our condolence to them.
I want to, I myself, I should say that, well, all the executive members of the foundation share closeness to those comments you have just made, and I want to say, to address this question of consensus, because you see, when we gained our independence in 1966, Guyana was in a state where there was need for collaborative work and a clear understanding as to the direction that the country would be going. And it was absolutely necessary that that Forbes Burnham address those issues frontally. One of the issues he had to address was that of our workers, of the Amerindians, the need for the parties to work together on measures and issues that will need to advance the interests of the country. And one of those issues I seem to recall very clearly was that of labor. When the British left in '66, there was no social network to take care of workers when they would have retired from the job. And Forbes Burnham, quite wisely, came up with this idea of the establishment of the National Insurance Scheme. Of course, the idea, when it was floated, garnered a lot of comments, of course critical and derogatory in some instances, from the opposition. At that time, the PPP was in the opposition. In fact, I seem to recall that they even called it the New Ideas to Steal, NIS, and they reversed it, they said it was sin. But Forbes Burnham was able to get the support of Dr. Jagan on this matter because it addressed the need and the issues pertaining to the workers of this country. And Jillian, I just want you to, and today we are seeing exactly since the 2011 election, what is your take on this question of consensus building between the parties that are in Parliament?
Thank you very much again, Mr. Hines. To answer your first question as it relates to the AML, like you rightly pointed out, due to the results of the 2011 elections, where we have a new disposition in Parliament with a minority government and a majority opposition, it has forced both sides of the House to be engaged in a lot of consensus and dialogue in order to arrive at a consensus and decisions on issues affecting the nation. So the results has forced both sides to get involved in negotiations. And recently we've been seeing the PPP on a campaign going around the country holding various consultations with stakeholders and in the various communities to get support for their position on the anti-money laundering bill that is before the House. And what we have seen is very typical of the PPP from going way back to when the PNC was in government. During my research, I came across a very interesting statement from our founder leader, Mr. Burnham, as it relates to the similar attitude of the PPP today in terms of going around the country, having these propaganda meetings and not going straight to the opposition parties and sitting
To discuss
down
the issues.
and discuss the issues. And I want to quote what he had to say on that. It was during an interview with Mr. Kester Alves on the issue of National Front government. And he said
On the
that
issue of what?
the National Front,
The National Front government.
And we'll come back to deal with that later on. But specifically, he said, speaking on the tactics of the PPP, he asked the question, now if the PPP were serious, are they going to start with discussions? Are they going to approach the leadership of the PNC through the press? To my mind, that is all palaver. That is all posture. Seriousness would have indicated a direct approach to the leadership of the PNC. And there he's saying that just what the PPP is doing now, if they were really serious about this anti-money laundering bill, etc., why not take a direct approach to the opposition parties instead of palavering and what he called posture of going around the country and you going to the media and the press and putting your case out in the press for the media and the public to have a say on it instead of taking a more direct approach, responsible approach to having discussions internally with the parties to come to a consensus.
Feet coming out of the public.
You can see that it's a general culture within the PPP for this palavering and posturing instead of having serious stuff.
If people, the word that is coming out from some of the communities and the people that they have been talking to, when they listen to the comments and explanations coming from the other side, the opposition, people are saying that it seems as though the speakers for the government doesn't seem to even understand the magnitude of the anti-money laundering bill of which they speak. But be that as it may, we as a foundation, we are engaged in a number of collaborative work to really bring to the fore issues pertaining to the anti-money laundering bill and the local government. And on the 26th of this month, there's a public forum at the Critchlow, public forum to discuss the anti-money laundering bill. And I want to take this opportunity to invite members of the public to that forum. It will begin at 5 o'clock on the 26th of this month at the Critchlow Labour College. One of the reasons why I think, as you rightly said, Forbes Burnham would have been able to, he feel if he was the government, he would have gone directly to the opposition and said, look, this issue, let us discuss and work around it and see where we can come to an agreement and have this thing over with. And you are saying, in your view and the research that you have shown, it has been a pattern of the PPP.
Yeah.
To go and have these meetings and not really going direct. As government, they should have gone directly to the opposition and work around the issue to have full agreement before taking these things to Parliament, so that it would not have all this accusation going to and forth.
Yes, Mr. Hines. I agree that that is the approach, the more responsible approach that the government should have taken. And even in the same interview with Mr. Alves relating to the proposal by the PPP through Mr. Jagan as it relates to a national front government, we've been hearing a lot of talks about shared governance, coalition government, etc., and the need for a consensus in terms of how we govern the country. And the proposal by the PPP through Mr. Jagan at the time, and even now as local government is in the air also, we know that the opposition has, the majority parliament has passed a motion in parliament calling for local government elections to be held by the 4th of August. And so on the issue of the shared governance and how leadership should operate, Mr. Jagan had proposed a 50-50
Sharing of ministries.
splitting of ministries.
I
They would
remember.
nominate 50 and he wanted Burnham to nominate 50. and he asked him how that would work because they, let me read for you what was said. When he proposed that, Mr. Burnham said all that would have amounted to was something similar to an uneasy truce between the two warlords, whose clients or constituencies will keep on pressing for more, and more, and that is not my concept of a national front. A national front must be based on a set of principles and must see unity at the grassroots. And that is where one must see unity as a grassroots. And that is what the PNC has been striving towards and achieving in large measures.
Quite clearly from what you have said there in relation to the two approaches. At the time, what you're pointing out is that Forbes Burnham, the proposal that came from the PPP, from Dr. Jagan, that was on the table, was for the sharing of the ministries of the government. Forbes Burnham was the government, the PNC was in the government, and he was not against this concept of a national front government, but it's just that he had a different concept in relation to how it needed to be executed. In his view, he said there must be consensus at the grassroots level, at the level of the communities, where people must work together, where there must be agreement in terms of what needs to be done in terms of drainage, what needs to be done in terms of road, what needs to be done in terms of schools, what needs to be done. Those issues are issues that need to be addressed at that level. And if you get the level of consensus at the level of the grassroots, then that will blossom at the level of the nation.
And
so quite rightly, the issue of local government elections were playing very prominently in the mind, in local government at the time was playing very prominently in the mind of Forbes Burnham. That kind of proposal came from him as against the one that came from the PPP.
Yes, that is what he was saying clearly, that at the level of the grassroots, and it shows clearly that he was a grassroots kind of president, and that is where his strongest support was and his interest was in the grassroots. And that is why he was so passionate about local government and the people having a stake and a say in how their communities and how their country in general should be run, so that if we have consensus at the level of the grassroots, then going up, we would be able to see a more consensus approach and decisions being made in a system of consensus, in the same spirit of consensus.
What you're saying very clearly highlight the point that on every issue of importance to the advancement of development of Guyana, Forbes Burnham sought to incorporate views and actions of the opposition and other interest groups, never arbitrarily taking a decision that will cause rancor, not just within the party, but within the country at large. If there was kind of condemnation say, for him, about him, on any issue or a decision that he was prepared to listen to people, kind of ideas, listen to what they had to say, and work around it to show his point of view and to see where they can work together. How pronounced is that approach now with the state of affairs that exists now in this country? It could never be overemphasized how important an approach of discussion and agreement with parties in Parliament to make sure that this issue of the anti-money laundering bill and local government moves forward. It is the view of the foundation that people need to take a position on these matters to make sure that the concerns and interests of the people are put on the front burner. And the only way that could be done is if the government, the PPP, sit down and address those issues with the opposition parties in Parliament. I want to highlight, for the purposes of our viewers, one aspect of consensus where I think that Forbes Burnham played a very significant role in. Unemployment and youth. There was a lot of unemployment. Young people weren't getting jobs in this country by the thousands. The government hadn't the capacity to absorb our young people that were coming out of the secondary schools and the university at the time to find kind of jobs. So there was a need for people to be employed, people to be exposed to training and various kinds of discipline in the society. What did Forbes Burnham do? He came up from his party, and the government came up with this idea of establishing an institution called the Guyana National Service, the GNS. Those of you who are as old as I am will remember the kind of criticism that came about when that was mooted. In fact, there was a campaign all over the country, region 1 to 10 by the PPP, condemning this approach. At one time, I remember that they were saying that Forbes Burnham trying to Douglarize the country, mixing the Indians and the black together in a national service. And at that time, when he spoke about it, they were saying that the thing is a compulsory thing, and that is what he was trying to do. But even though the idea was to find an opportunity where we can channel the energies and the potential of the young people in the country towards training and bringing them around where they can be able to make a contribution towards the development of this country. He was getting lashed left, right, and center from the opposition. What did Forbes Burnham do? They were holding out on this question that national service ought not to be compulsory because of cultural differences in terms of the races. Forbes Burnham didn't say that I wouldn't listen. He didn't go ahead. He listened to what the opposition had to say then and came around to the decision that the national service will not be compulsory. And that is where, and look what has resulted from that kind of decision. They were able to provide training for thousands of young people who today credit the national service for the role it played in fashioning their lives and their livelihood. Now I'm saying that these were very key issues that needed the attention of not just the party in government. It needed the support and attention of all the stakeholders in this country. But there was a need for young people, the issues pertaining to young people, to be addressed. And that is what Forbes Burnham did. He collaborated with everybody to get a decision. But now the national service is no more. And we are actually back at square one, where there are thousands of young people out there, unemployed, nothing to do. And the government has no program to absorb them nowhere. No program to address the concerns and interests for the livelihood ahead. Now, these are all concerns that, had it been Forbes Burnham, Jillian, your research, what you think he would have been doing today with this question of unemployment and young people?
Well, I believe that he would have probably set up a committee or a commission to look into some of the shortcomings why young people are not getting jobs, do an investigation and come up with a serious report, and then he would have gone to the parliament and sought support to address the issue. And that is the approach he took on most of the national issues, where you do the necessary groundwork first and then you go to the parliament and present your case and have the opposition also who would be there. They would oppose or support. Most of the times what I found during my research is that a lot of the times when the PPP was out in the public palavering, as Mr. Burnham said, they weren't, when in the National Assembly, they couldn't put forward a cohesive or strong criticism on the issues that out in the public and the bottom house meetings they were going and telling their supporters a lot of propaganda and misinformation, misrepresenting the issues. But when they went to the National Assembly to stand up and properly articulate what it is that they were opposing, they failed to do that effectively. And as such, on many occasions, Mr. Burnham in the National Assembly at the time as Prime Minister would have highlighted these inconsistencies and called them out on it. And as such, most of the proposals that they would have been objecting to during the debate, they couldn't really hold up to any serious scrutiny, and as such, the government was able to convince them of why we must go in this direction, whichever direction we were seeking to do. And what you had at that time too, the government, the PNC government, would put out a document so that the general public and
Could
even
study.
us young people now doing research, we can go now and look and see exactly what were the reasons and why some of the systems that were implemented, why they were implemented. Like for instance, we always used to hear the PPP talking a lot about, and even continue today, about Burnham banning split peas and rice flour and these issues, but you don't really know what was the cause for it before. And it was interesting during my research, one of the articles I came across was a proposal by Chedi Dragon to buy split peas from Canada. And at that time, Dragon was a very strong anti-imperialist. That is one of the words I found him using a lot in his speeches, as opposing whatever the PNC, Mr. Burnham, was putting forward, imperialists. He was always referring to them as the imperialists, and rigging elections. And so Burnham was able to show that, look, you're accusing us of being an imperialist, but you are proposing that we go to the same imperialists and buy this split peas when the country at the time was short on foreign currency. How could you? It was a very hypocritical position. And as such, Burnham was able to say that we would continue to, as soon as the situation in the country was as such that we are able to plant and grow enough split peas to supply the local market, we would ban the split peas, because there was no point in importing something that you can supply locally, and we would save on much needed foreign currency. And that was the general trend of a lot of the opposition that came from the PPP. These anti-imperialist slogans and rig election slogan, but there wasn't any strong, clear case where they could put forward an alternative to whatever the PNC was proposing at the time. They had no serious proposal. Most of it was hypocritical and going against some of their own beliefs that they would have been articulating at the time. But just to palaver again to their constituents and try to make it look like the government at the time was anti-Indian and anti-national development, etc. They would throw up these arguments which had no sound basis.
You see, I like what you said, and I think that I need to just expand a little on that, because Forbes Burnham, it is reported that when he feels very strongly on an issue, he works on every front, and he doesn't really just go to his party or cabinet or parliament to discuss issues. There were times when he had private meetings with Dr. Jagan to discuss those issues, private meetings to really get his way and show the reasons why these things are so. And on many instances, those private meetings yielded kind of results, because in some instances he was able to get Dr. Jagan to change his kind of positions. But all in all, when these things are done, it was done with the whole focus being the interests of the nation. Every project that was undertaken by the PNC under Forbes Burnham was done with a very clear understanding from the public out there what it was about. Every project, you can look at them: the Amara Harbor Bridge, the Linden Highway, the Cyril Potter College of Education, the Sports Hall, the Cultural Center, the highway to the quarantine, the expansion of Blackbush Boulder scheme, the Tapakuma irrigation project. You can list them all, the MMA, Myconia Barry Development Authority, very clear. There was no hiding under the table. Everything was out in the public domain, so people had a right to comment. And if the comments were sound and made sense, he was prepared to go and review and discuss with those who were concerned what if he needed to change the approach. Now, the point I'm making is that on every issue, he was open. Not anything to hide, all the projects. And I think I'm old enough to remember those major projects that were undertaken by Forbes Burnham. Let us take this concept of nationalism. When we became independent, some people refused to stand when the anthem was being played. And Forbes Burnham made it a case in point that it was compulsory. People got to understand that this is what represents this nation whenever our anthem is played. People were saying that they were not standing, just for opposing sake. Then they had a question of the 1763 revolution that ushered in, which was really the beginning of the formation of an independent nation in 1763. Forbes Burnham, while he was in government, established a building and cleared up those replicas that existed at Magdalenenburg. Today that place is dense vegetation, big bush, the house has broken down. There's nothing there. But he needed to preserve those little relics, those little things that occurred in our history. And today, if you go in the Kanji River, there is nothing in Kanji. Forbes Burnham had established a building. He had cleaned up all those kind of barracks that had the clay brick buildings and so on there. Now that is all bush. The point I'm trying to make over, and I'll open the lines later on in the program so our viewers can comment and make suggestions, because the foundation has a very serious program for the rest of this year and next year. Of course, I'll allow the Secretary, Ms. Akeisha Simpson, to address what we have done for the past year and what we will do for the rest of this year and next year, because our goal is to make sure that our people are informed on issues that Forbes Burnham has undertaken and his dreams and what his thinking has been for this country. Like I said, I will open the lines not very long from now so that you out there can have an opportunity to comment on these matters. But at this stage, I want to introduce the members of the public to what we will be dealing with. But before I go to Akeisha, I want to ask Jillian, because Jillian has been doing some very serious research on Forbes Burnham in recent times. And I would just like you to add one additional point you said you wanted to make.
Yes, it's not related to this subject, but during the week, there was a letter published by one Maxwell speaking to the issue of the anti-money laundering, the drug trade in Guyana, and how the PPP has been addressing it or not addressing it. And in that letter, he accused the PNC during government of not seriously addressing the issue of the drug trade. And I thought that I would mention that during the PNC administration under Desmond Hoyt, when the drug trade has just started to become prominent and of concern to the government, we had the PNC came forward with the National Drug Development Strategy. Under the PNC, legislation was passed dealing with the National Drug Enforcement Unit. In the National Assembly, we passed legislation addressing the issues of narcotics, etc. And also, I say that to compare it also to what is happening today in terms of the same AML, where the government today, we see clearly, don't really have a clear strategy on how to handle this money laundering business. What happened during the PNC administration, that national development strategy in terms of the drug trade, they had a clear policy on how to address the issues, the statistics, etc. And the legislation was passed, and not only that the legislation was passed, but it was also implemented in the sense that we also had a famous case of Taps and Bokilo being charged under that act, and those were two famous persons involved in the drug trade at the time that most Guyanese would have been familiar with. Prominent persons, and even persons may have accused the PNC of them being supporters of the PNC. So you see, clearly under the PNC administration, we were not afraid of going after
drug dealers
or persons who were perceived to be supporters of the PNC, regardless of whether it was ethnicity or geographical constituency, because those persons came from PNC strongholds. As opposed to now, where the PPP in 2009 passed the AML, Trafficking in Terrorism Act, but no serious effort was made to go after persons involved in money laundering, etc. And that is the difference between the PNC government at the time and the PPP government of today. The PNC was willing to go after, it wasn't just lip service, we're against this thing, and not show the actual effort.
Show the public that they were serious
Right.
in relation to what
And
they were
that
doing.
is what is happening today, even though the PPP would like us to believe that they're serious against money laundering, but there's nothing to support. There's no as
action.
we know, only one case was taken to the DPP, and even that was a weak case. The DPP couldn't move forward. She needed more information, etc. So I just thought I'd mention that in passing, that the PNC, the way the PNC dealt with the drug trade at the time as it was emerging, and this money laundering that is emerged during the PPP administration, and how they have handled it. The PNC was also willing to work with the United States and the ABC countries to curb it, and as such they sent persons to England to get training, etc., to be able to deal with the issue at the level of the police force to handle the drug trade. And now you see the PPP refusing to cooperate with these countries in order to curb the money laundering and drug trade today.
All right, like I said, I'll be opening a line, but I want Akeisha, or the secretary of the foundation, to just highlight what we have been doing over the years. For say the last year and part of this year, and what we'll be doing say for next year. Quite recently, to commemorate the 91st birth anniversary of Forbes Burnham in the month of February, we have conducted a number of activities as a foundation, which we do every year. And I want Akeisha to just tell you what we have been doing, and to remind our viewers that we will be opening the lines. If you want to call in, you can call in, ask your questions and comments, as long as it's within our competence to answer. If I don't know, I will tell you very clearly, I don't have an answer, but I will find out. So Akeisha, what has the foundation been doing? And what is happening at the moment?
Thank you, Mr. Hines, and morning again to our viewers. But just before I answer your question, I want the viewers to know that the Forbes Burnham Foundation is a non-governmental organization, and its main aim is to preserve the legacy and memory of the first Prime Minister and Executive President of post-independent Guyana. Now, the foundation each year conduct a number of activities to commemorate the life of this great man, this distinguished leader. And last year, there were a number of activities that we did. We had in the month of February, and let me say before I say that the foundation year is not a calendar year. It begins from March and it goes until February of the next year. So last year, February, to commemorate the birth anniversary of the leader of the People's National Congress, we held a cycle race, and that was done in a two-stage. As you could remember, we went from Carifest Avenue to Belfield, and the other part came from
Georgetown to Linden.
No,
Fr- From from Belfield to town.
no.
We
The
went
other
to-
part came from
On the
East
Bank
Bank.
East Bank,
to-
okay.
East Bank to Carifesto,
Mhm.
and then from Carifesto to Belfield.
From the Linden Suzette Highway.
Mhm. The
Yeah,
junction.
that was last year, last February,
Oh yes, yes.
right?
Mhm.
And that we also had the annual church service, which was well attended, the concert, was also well attended, and we also had held a symposium to commemorate the birth anniversary of the founder leader. We also later down for CARICOM last year we held a brunch, and this is also an annual something that is being done each year for CARICOM. We keep a brunch which is held at Watercress, and we invite members of the public now to attend. It's very nice. And this year, that was for last year, for
Last year, yeah.
February.
Mhm.
For the memorial, we had a wreath laying ceremony, which we collaborated with the party to lay wreath at the mausoleum and also at the Women's Arm, where the bus is erected in memory.
Kitty.
Yes, in Kitty, in memory of the late leader. And when it comes to the death anniversary, there is a symposium, and we choose topics for the symposium that are relevant
Mhm.
to the issues that are going on around the country. And we have presenters who are competent in that area to speak to members of the public as relates to that. And we also will keep for
When you're having a symposium.
the symposium last year was held in the month of August.
August, okay. Yeah.
Right?
That is to commemorate the death anniversary.
Yes, that is to commemorate the death anniversary of the leader.
Mhm.
And at the year end, we keep a social for the members of the foundation, where we sit and we reflect on what was done during the past year. Now, this year is very interesting, and we have a number of items that we plan to introduce, other than those mentioned that I just mentioned. Those that I mentioned there is done annually, but for this year, for the month of March, we're planning to have our executive meeting and to meet with the general membership of the foundation to discuss and plan ways how we can move the foundation forward and how we can meet the public. We also have the monthly television program like we're having now to discuss the issues that are relevant and the viewers may want to share their views on. This year, we have a new item on our agenda, and that is we're planning to have an essay competition among the secondary schools pupils in Georgetown and in Region 4, and you will hear more about that. We also new on our agenda this year is we're planning to have a memorial domino competition on July 6th. You will also hear more about that. And like I said, the annual brunch is coming up. This year it will be held on July 7th. In August, for the death anniversary, there will be an exhibition and a wreath laying ceremony. We'll also have for emancipation, we will have an exhibition there again in the National Park. And this year we're taking our symposium out of Georgetown. We are going to New Amsterdam, and we're also going to Linden, so that the persons in those areas can get to see what the foundation is doing. Now in September, we will induct our mentorship scheme, and the vice chairman will elaborate some on the mentorship scheme, what it is about, how you can become a member of the mentorship scheme, and so forth. In October, this is also a new item on our agenda. We're planning to have a producers market where we will invite the farmers, the persons who are in arts and craft, health, foods, and lectures. And we will have these people at one central place, and you can come and see the exhibits that they will have on display. And Saturday, the 2nd of January, and this is coming down to the end of our
Calendar
year.
year, yeah. Okay.
We will have our year-end social as usual, and then we will have the birth anniversary activities for the late found
for
the
the year
leader.
for 2014,
for
for
the-
2015.
Yeah, but remember our calendar year ends
Ends in February.
in February. And this is our year-end activity, the annual church service, cycle race, symposium, and the annual general members meeting. Now, each of these programs that we have here planned have a cost attached to it.
Mhm.
It costs the foundation quite a bit. And this year we are planning to have donations towards these programs. And I'm asking our viewers and the donating public that when they see the letters come out, don't be afraid to donate to these worthy cause.
Yes, Akeisha, that's a lot you're saying, and I just need to say to the public that Akeisha has just outlined to you what we have been doing both during the period of our calendar year. But to say, even though that is the outline, we will bring information to you as the activities kind of comes up. And one of the strategies that we are applying this year is that we're not just only going to be telling you what we're doing, what the foundation is doing. We're going to, when we're getting into contact with you, you're going to see a program attached with cost on it, as so much it costs us to do these various things. So that we're not just coming soliciting assistance, say we want you to make a donation towards the foundation. You will see the program that the foundation has with the cost attached to it, so you know where your money is being spent. And if your interests extend much further at the end of the year, when we're having our conference and you need to get your report, you will hear what the foundation has done with the proceeds that we have garnered and how we have advanced our work during the year that we will be reviewing at our conference. Like I said, you have mentioned the mentorship scheme, and I need to perhaps ask the vice chairperson. We have launched our mentorship scheme last year, and we are having another induction program in September according to that outline you have just given. What is happening with those inductees, and what do you plan to do for your mentorship scheme this year?
Thank you very much again, Mr. Hines. The mentorship scheme has been functioning. We've been working with the young people, our first batch. September, we would be inducting a new batch. Those would be students who would be writing the SSE or the grade 6 examination during the Easter holiday. We would be inducting a new batch come September. And we normally take young people from whose parents are members of the People's National Congress Reform, the Georgetown district. As you know, the mentorship scheme as being part of the Forbes Burnham Foundation. We work with persons who had or have an association with the founder leader and his party, the People's National Congress, and that is why we choose the Georgetown district, because we focus mostly cater for children from the Georgetown area because of logistics. And so we also work with some of the trade unions that were close to the founder leader, Mr. Burnham, worked with or was a part of, like the
Guyana Labor
Union, etc., and the University of Guyana Workers Union. We have the parents of those children who would have written the exam. We ask them to send in their information, and we would extract those that we think, the numbers that we can manage, and we work with those children. But I also want to make a special appeal this morning to the parents of those inductees that we have on board now, to encourage the young people to come out, ensure that they come out to these sessions. They are very informative and can play a very major role in the grooming of your children outside of the school. And we also want to appeal to them to encourage them to ensure that the students are punctual. You know, we at the level of the Burnham Foundation, you know, a lot of people say, oh, in Guyana, we have this issue with time, and it's part of our culture that if something is starting 3 o'clock, you leave home at 3 o'clock, and then you come at 4 o'clock, and you know that the event is supposed. We don't want to embrace that culture, and these students that we are working with, we don't want them to become a part of that culture. That is not a culture that should be encouraged and enforced, and as such, we're asking the parents to ensure that the students leave home at a reasonable time, providing for any obstacles or so that would happen along the way, and so that they would be able to reach to the venue on time.
Yeah,
So
being
we are-
punctual
Punctuality is very important.
is a quality
and
that is
it's
required.
going to be very important as they grow older and they go into the workforce. Let's encourage them and teach them what is right, and encourage them to be punctual at all times, not just to this activity, but in going to school and any other activity that they're involved with. Punctuality is very good, and it's very disciplined, and we need to enforce discipline.
Yes, I have a friend who says that aspire always to be early than to perspire to be late. And for viewers, but the lines are now open. You can make a call. We will perhaps entertain a few calls before it's program time. If you have a comment to make in relation to the work that we're doing, the issue that is being addressed in relation to this question of consensus building by Forbes Burnham, and what is happening today, the failure to get agreement between the various parties in government and opposition to clear the way for the passing of the bill and the holding of local government election. These are all very, very pertinent issues that need the input from every Guyanese so that we can move very rapidly the pace of development that is so required. I think I see our lines are going. Morning, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning.
Morning, sir.
Yes,
Yes? Yes, you're on the air. Hello? Are you there? Hello? Yes, like we've lost that call. Yes, I was saying that it's very important that those things be addressed, because at the level of the foundation, those activities that we have outlined, we're not going to just tell you about them here now, because our strategy will be, like I said, we're not doing things just because we want to do them. And organizations out there who will be dealing with us and individuals, we're going to let you know what these costs are for every event and activity. So when we're telling you, asking for your involvement, we're going to show you. Morning, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Morning, ma'am.
Before I say anything, I want to say how my condolences
Oh, yes.
goes out for the Bacchus family. Okay, it was a great loss to not only Parliament, but Ms. Bacchus was a people person. Okay, and the people are going to miss her very, very much on behalf of the African Culture and Development Association.
Yes,
I
okay.
See how sorry we are for loss. That being said, the Burnham Foundation, if you hear my voice, you could guess that I am a Burnhamite to the bone. And the Burnham Foundation, I think, should be more aggressive
Yes.
in putting out some of those, or reiterating some of those policies that we know that Burnham was very, very passionate about. Okay? Now we cannot do very big things given the situation.
Yes.
But there are things that we could do that will make an impact in the lives of people who believe that Burnham had us, the people, at heart.
Yeah, okay.
Had us, the people, at heart.
All right.
Burnham Foundation, I believe, should be more aggressive. I'm seeing on other sides the person who have died so long ago is still making speeches at meetings.
Mm.
Okay? Don't want that. We want Burnham to live in our hearts and in our minds. And we, if there's one thing or two things or three things that he was very passionate about, and we could do it to keep it, to remind people that Burnham was the man of all seasons. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, thanks very much for that call. I really appreciate your call. Yes, for Burnham, we, like the caller said, we are endeavoring, like the caller said, we should be more aggressive. We're endeavoring in our own limited way to do the best we could given the resources at our disposal. But we can give you the guarantee that the work of the foundation is here to stay and we will continue. And as we develop and expand, we will be able to garner the strength to get a little bit more aggressive so that people can really understand the quality of the man that passed decades ago. Morning, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning.
Morning, sir.
This is a very good show.
Yes.
And Burnham is Guyana, Guyana is Burnham. Yes, he is the man that brought food and promote Guyanese. Now, I think you guys are doing a very good program. And anything that is put up in relation for Guyana and is not doing good, it's already been done. The idea has been there. All you have to do is compare it and show the people where the government or whoever is in power is doing wrong in relation to what is needed for Guyana and the Guyanese people.
Okay.
The idea is Burnham. It's already there. The foundation has been laid. Just bring it alive. Good.
Okay. All right, thanks for calling. Yeah, the work of the foundation, like I said, will continue. We are looking at the question of consensus for Burnham and consensus. And there were very pertinent issues and projects that needed the support of opposition. And Burnham, he was very quick to make sure that that kind of support was coming. Morning, you on the air.
A very good morning to you,
Morning, sir.
Mr. Hines, you
Yes.
and your panel there. What
Yes.
I think that each and every one of these programs should have started with a past speech of Forbes Burnham. Public relations is a very important thing.
Yes.
You can still listen to Cherry Jagan speaking at their meetings and whatever it is. But why is it? At this program, rather than people sitting down there and talking, I mean, you're doing a good job, you should have been and talking about Burnham. Let Burnham talk to the people himself. He had speeches. Try and get them on television.
Yes, I take your point.
Okay?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. In fact, I should just
support is always with the Forbes.
I should just
Foundation.
inform you
Okay.
that we have a few. We can find some more because they had destroyed a lot of them.
Regardless if you
And we try to get them
over and
in.
over, let it be the opening scene for your program.
Okay, we're gonna be doing that and doing it very soon.
But I'm feeling
I will make a note of it. I see my lights are
much
going.
better now, Heinz. I'm feeling much better now.
All right, thanks for hearing that, and I recognize your voice, and I want to say good morning to you. And for the caller who said before, I want you to know that Miss Debbie Backer has been a friend of mine. We have been very close. We talk, we argue at the level of the party, but she's a great person. We have another 5 minutes, but I will take a few more calls and hear what we're doing. Morning, you're on the air.
Good morning. It's
Morning.
morning to you and your panel,
Yes.
and I'd like to extend my condolences to the Backer family. And I second that caller that just went off the air just now.
Yes,
I
okay.
think you should start your program with Voices of the Burnham and end it with that.
Okay.
Very much.
Thanks very much. Yeah, okay. Yes, I was saying that Miss Deborah Backer, well, of course, those of us who have dealt with her would know the quality of the woman. Like, I always describe her as a woman of worth. The woman of worth on every issue. Debbie is there. Morning, you're on the air.
Hello?
Morning.
Hi. I was trying to get onto this program for the last 5 minutes. Anyway.
Yeah, you just have 2 minutes.
Okay, well.
Yes.
I just made my claim.
Mm.
The program is very interesting. Lyndon Forbes Burnham, as the founder leader as we know it, is one of the people that we have taken the past from and listened to. But anyway, my point right now is that although this is Lyndon Forbes Burnham program, I think that all the presidents, Mr. Jagan, have done some kind of good for this country. The first time I saw Burnham was a small guy, 9 years old. I remember when Civex got banned, and what Bonham stood for. I didn't understand what's the cause of the banning then, but I understand that I'm a big man now. I'm 37 years old. I understand what is it. Stand up on our own,
Yes.
not being dependent. And I think that was one of the greatest things he could have tried to teach us.
Yes.
How, with Indian and Guyanese pertaining to this whole Bonham thing and Indian and Jagan thing, I think it needs to change. It's been going on too long now.
Yes, yes. I share closeness to that comment.
We didn't have anywhere else to go. I traveled abroad. And when you go there, then you understand that you're not from Yak.
Okay.
So as a Guyanese, I think we, Indian, black, and whoever, whichever 6 races, meaning one nation, we supposed to stand together. This is just my saying.
Okay.
for this.
Thanks, comment. Fair comment. I like your comment, and we will try as much as we can to make sure that we highlight. In fact, we do agree. I know, and personally, I know that Dr. Jagan is a contributor to Guyana's development. I know that.
Exactly.
And we don't ever kind of discredit that at all, because he's a man for whom I have unswerving respect.
Okay.
Unswerving.
I'm just trying to explain
Yes,
that most
okay.
of the people are trying to put it that way now. That is
Yes.
division thing. Mr. Ramjatan and Granger and those guys, I think those guys doing a wonderful job. I think this was, if as a Guyanese, Indian, Black, Chinese, Portuguese, this was
Yes, Guyanese. We must speak
right
Guyanese
for-
as together, one people.
or else we're going to find ourselves in an abyss of nonsense all the time.
Okay.
And they're trying to clean us up.
All right, thanks for calling.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I was saying we're approaching program time, and I want to give these two beautiful roses next to me an opportunity to make their closing remark. But just before I do that, I might want to take just one more call. Morning, on the air.
Hi, Clayton.
Yes, sir.
That position that Hector Stout made just now about making Bonham,
The speech.
just making Bonham speech,
Up front and at the close of the program.
the team, right?
Yes.
That is great and insightful. So do that as quick as you can.
Yes, on the next program, I can guarantee our viewers that you will hear voices of Forbes Burnham beginning, middle, and end of this program for an hour. And we are also working to see if we can have another program during the month. So that other than having just one program per month, we have two.
Good.
Anyway, thanks for
Okay,
calling.
Clayton, good. See you later.
Yes, morning. I want to just tell you that I want to give these two ladies. First, I want to start with Akeisha. Could you just give us your closing remarks? We got a few seconds.
Yes, thanks again, Mr. Hines. And I also want to close my remarks by saying that the Forbes Burnham Foundation has an executive, and the executive is sharing the grief that the family of Miss Baker, we all were close friends of her, a dear friend. She was a dear friend of mine, especially. The chairman, Mr. Vincent Alexander, the vice chairpersons, Miss Julian Gall and Miss Nicole Cole, the secretary, yours truly, Akeisha Simpson, the treasurer, Mr. Ivla Henry, our public relations officer, Mr. Hines, and Comrade Wendy Johnson, who is the assistant secretary. The executive, once again, would like to thank all those faithful viewers who tune in every last Sunday to see our program. And I once again want to ask for your support and your continued support for this program and for the activities of the foundation.
Well, Jillian, over to you. You want your closing remarks.
The second to last viewer mentioned about the former presidents, and in during my research, I came across an interesting comment from the late President Burnham as it relates to Cheddi Jagan. He was asked to comment on his short trip as leader of the PPP and former leader at that time of the president of Guyana Premier. And he said Cheddi Jagan made a contribution to the development of Guyana, but a leader he wasn't. And on that note,
All right, I want to thank our viewers for tuning into this program. I know the lines are going. I see it has been going for quite some time, but we just have to close at this point until the next fourth Sunday, when I'll be coming to you again on the State of the Nation. My name is Clayton Hines, your host on this program every month. And I want to thank you for being with me in your living room, your bedroom, and maybe in your kitchen. having listened to this program. I really want to sincerely thank you for being with me until next month.